Over the past several weeks, there have been several articles on Nextdoor.com as well as Facebook and Reddit about helicopters flying over the Salt Lake Valley with their navigation lights or nav lights turned off. And so I made this video because I captured some footage of one of those helicopters, and this video will probably answer some of the questions. It might actually raise a few other questions because there's some things in the video that I don't understand. And we can talk about that. Now, this footage comes from October 26th, 2021, and it was captured over the valley of Midvale and Cottonwood Heights and Murray. And when I first heard the helicopter, it flew over my house, and it loitered for several minutes, and I decided to grab my infrared camera, and I ran outside, and I couldn't see the helicopter. It took me a while to hunt around for it, but then as soon as I acquired it, I started to roll the camera. This is handheld, so it looks really jerky and weird, so forgive me for that. But this particular mode in the camera is the color night vision. It doesn't have a lot of resolution anyway, and so it's pretty grainy, but let me kind of show you what we're looking at here. This is a helicopter looking at it from the tip to the tail, and then this blue orb right here is actually the heat signature from the turbine exhaust, which shows up on the infrared. And then the rotor blades would be rolling around right through here. You can see the tail boom going this way. So that's what we're looking at. But most unusually, it had its navigation lights turned off. So I'm just going to play a little bit more of this footage. You can get a little bit more of an idea of what that helicopter looks like and its attitude and so forth. And then I thought, well, I better get this on a tripod so I can get it focused and so that it's not going to be so jerky. So I shot this footage, and some strange things happen in this footage, but let's just look at it here for a moment. What we're looking at now, I'll just pause it right here, is the tip of the helicopter to the tail. So now the tip of the helicopter is pointing towards the south from me, and it's hovering essentially over I-215, the belt route, at about 15th East. And so here's the tip and the tail boom goes through here. And as we play this, you can see the rotors. And as the tail boom comes around here, you'll see this bright light. That bright light is, again, the turbine exhaust. It's very, very hot, so it shows up on infrared. But then something really peculiar happens. And I don't think this is aliens or anything. It's just kind of strange, and I don't know what's happening here. But as I press play some more, at the top of the frame, you will see a light come down and start to fall. Or maybe it's not falling, maybe it's just going across the sky. But it's not flashing, so I don't think that's an aircraft. And because nav lights will flash, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then it makes a turn to the left and a turn to the right, and then it goes behind the cloud. So it is at a higher elevation than the helicopter, because the helicopter is flying well below the clouds. But something else really strange happens. Let me go back here a little bit. As that starts to fall behind the clouds, another little light pops up out of the clouds or above the clouds. That happens right over here on the right-hand side of the screen. See that little light pop right out of the clouds or above the clouds? So I didn't know what that was. Let me allow you to watch that in its entirety. Here, we'll start back here. There it is. And it comes down. It's not flashing. You know, could be an aircraft of some sort, but if it's emitting some sort of light or heat. And then it turns, goes behind the clouds, and that's when that other one popped up. That's strange. I don't know what's happening there. We can discuss that after. And then the helicopter continues to hover. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit because a little bit later on, another object I can't identify comes through the frame. It's going to start over here on the right-hand side of your frame. It's another light. I keep looking around for those other lights, and I can't find them. Those are stars. None of which are moving, at least not not in the video. I mean, they're moving, but actually the planet is moving. At any rate, here comes this other little light. And it is flying above at a higher altitude than the helicopter. And I'll show this footage to you again so you can see what's happening there and how I can determine that the light is at a higher altitude. Now, that could be a low-flying or a satellite in low Earth orbit. It's not flashing. It's moving in a very, very straight line. It's not turning or anything like the other lights. Seems to be maintaining a constant rate of velocity. Then I reacquired the helicopter. Let me go back through that again. And I'm going to try and pause right when that light gets to the position of the helicopter. There it is. I'm going to try and pause. As I pause it, you'll notice that the light goes behind the helicopter. I can't see it anymore because it is above the helicopter. It's at a higher altitude. That's why I can't see it. So it's going behind the helicopter. Then as I press play again, it comes out. Let me just start that sequence over again. There's a big flash where the screen goes white. The reason why is because I wanted to see if that was something in front of my lens. But if it was that close to my lens, and so anyway, I put my hand in front of the lens to see if I could brush it away, but that wasn't the case. There's my hand. Let me take it back, just so you can see the whole sequence again. As soon as I find that helicopter, I see that little light flying through the frame. There it is. Goes behind the helicopter. I try to brush away whatever might be in front of my lens as if that was a piece of dust or something. It's obviously not a piece of dust. If it was that close to the camera, it would have lit up really bright because it would have been totally out of focus because my focus is thrown way out for distant objects, not nearby objects. So I don't know what that is either. We can discuss that. But now let's move back to the helicopter. The helicopter moves kind of laterally back and forth several times. And at one point, I can kind of see what I think is the vertical stabilizer on the tail boom. I'm still looking around for other lights. Let me get back to it here. Yeah, right about here. Now it's kind of backing up. So again, here's the tip. There's the tail. And then, as we get to about the 6-minute mark almost the 7-minute mark, there's a rudder input, and the aircraft starts to go to the left pretty noticeably. And then, as it does so, I start to catch a little bit more profile of the helicopter. Now I'm going to pause it right here. See these two little lines right here? These are horizontal stabilizers. And we can also see that the tail is kind of a very shallow V shape. So here's the tip of one V, here's the opposing tip of the V. So that's the vertical stabilizer, and the horizontal stabilizer is visible. And as this helicopter starts to move out of the area, couple of telltale things are visible here. We can see that vertical stabilizer pretty clearly now, but we also see a couple of swooshes of paint that start from the tip of the aircraft and go back to where the turbine exhaust is, and then that same swoosh seems to divert and go off towards the back of the aircraft body before it gets to the tail boom, and so I'll just let that play out. It's actually easier to see those swooshes as the aircraft is in motion. There we go. I'm kind of trying to move around my tripod as the helicopter orbits around me, but then it goes behind this tree, and a thing happens. As soon as it goes behind the tree, you're going to see some lights coming from the tail of the aircraft. Right here. It goes behind this tree, and boom, we see some lights. Now, it's obscured by the tree, so I reposition the camera to the opposite side of the tree and wait for the helo to emerge here. And here it comes. And now it has turned on its nav lights. That's what a helicopter looks like with its nav lights on. It's got a couple of constant nav lights, and then it has that flashing light on top of its tail. or on top of the vertical stabilizer. So that made me wonder what the DPS helicopters look like here in the state of Utah. I immediately thought that it was a Bell, like a 204 or a 205, because the Bell 204 and 5 and a lot of the aircraft from the 200 series aircraft have that vertical stabilizer, or the horizontal stabilizer. But if you'll notice, it has a single piece vertical stabilizer. It doesn't have a stabilizer that comes out of the ventral part of the tail boom, like this particular helicopter does in the footage. And so I thought I'd find a picture of the DPS helicopters here in the state, and this is what they look like. Let me blow this up nice and big. And what we're looking at here is the Utah Department of Public Safety helicopter, ID number November 253 Hotel Papa. It has those swooshes that start at the tip and go towards the tail rotor, or towards the turbine exhaust, and then that little swoosh diverges here and goes under the body near the start of the tail boom. And most importantly, we have that horizontal stabilizer, and look at the vertical stabilizer. It is two pieces. There's one on the dorsal part of the tail boom and one on the ventral part. So that's a two-piece vertical stabilizer, and it looks identical to the helicopter in the footage. If I go back to where we can really see that helicopter moving around, let's go back to right about here. And I'm not going to freeze frame it because you'll be able to see the swooshes a little bit more easily. But look at that tail assembly. See how it has two pieces, a ventral and a dorsal? You can also see the horizontal stabilizer. Now you can really see those swooshes of paint. And that's the telltale sign that this is a DPS helicopter, Department of Public Safety helicopter. Then it turned its nav lights on again. So that aircraft is obviously one of the helicopters. I think they have two helicopters that are the same type of aircraft. It's an Airbus H-125 helicopter, and I think they have two of them at the DPS. And so I'm sure that it was a DPS helicopter that was flying without its nav lights on, and that may be standard operating procedure at night to make the bird dark so that people can't acquire a shot at the helicopter. If they're tracking some sort of activity that involved firearms, then they definitely don't want to have the helicopter be visible to the point of being shot at. And so maybe that's why they black out. I don't know. I would think it's very unsafe to be flying a helicopter at low altitudes with its nav lights off. So we can talk about that. If any of you know why a helicopter would be flying around the valley, a DPS helicopter like this with its nav lights off, maybe you can comment in this thread. But another thing I wanted to add is a user on nextdoor.com actually had the flight plan from one of those helicopters the night of the video that I just showed you. And if we look, it was apparently following a car chase out in Sandy. And if we zoom in up here, this is about where I saw the helicopter. My house is right here, and the helicopter was flying right around here, right over I-215. And it left going this way, and this Flight Radar 24 data shows the aircraft either entering. I don't see where it enters and where it exits. It looks like it enters and exits from the exact same vector. So this one right here, but the helicopter that I saw actually flew from about here over my house going in this direction. So I'm not sure that is the helicopter. That is one of the DPS helicopters. It's November 352 Hotel Papa. The video of the one that I saw, I couldn't see the ID number, so I don't know which helicopter it was. But one of the other helicopters is a similar number. It's November 253. That's the one that we see in the still shot that I have right here. This is November 253 Hotel Papa. So I'm sure that was a DPS helicopter. Not quite sure what all the other lights were moving around the helicopter. Again, I don't think it's aliens, but it's just a little strange. We can talk about that. Comment below. Let me know what you think. But that will answer your question as to whose helicopter it was flying around, at least that particular night, and you get to see some of what it was doing, because you couldn't see it with the naked eye.